All right, we're back in another Sound the Battle Cry. And the name of the message today is The Role of Tricksters as Agents of Chaos, Bringing Destruction to the Old Order. Now, this message I've been working on for a long time, but we are ready, and I've been preparing for this as well by putting out a few other messages. The biggest one that's the most important that you listen to prepare for this is called The Author of Confusion. So make sure you watch that to prepare for this. That will help to get you solid on the biblical verses about this that help you to understand things in a spiritual context and to prepare your mind for what we're going to be dealing with today. And also, other messages to prepare for this would be Kanye on Alex Jones and the Phoenix Death Ritual, and also Kanye's love for trolling and the dark underworld of performance art. And we're not going to be dwelling on Kanye on this one. We're just going to talk about him a little bit in the beginning, and then we're going to launch off into a much bigger picture, talk about a ton of other stuff, and we're not going to be focusing on him. But we are going to show that he is playing a role in a much bigger picture, and that there's a lot more going on. Some people just dismiss things right away. Oh, it's just, this is stupid, he's mentally ill, or I don't understand. Well, just because you don't understand doesn't mean that there isn't more going on. Maybe it's just that you're lacking in the knowledge and you don't know what you're seeing, and that there is more going on underneath the surface. And so I want to show you some of that today. And so, we're going to start in the present day, go back through history, bring you back up to present day time, and you're going to see what has been hidden but going on the whole time, and it's going to help you to really understand what's been going on, especially in the 20th century and going on right now. It's very important to understand these things. So we're going to get into it. We got a lot of information to cover. This teaching is one that you might not get right away, but as you learn more and more, you will see the importance of it for understanding a lot of history and also the times we are living in right now. And you might need to watch it more than one time. There's probably going to get more each time you watch it or listen. After we briefly discuss some points about Kanye and his influences, we will break away from focusing on Kanye to a much bigger picture. We ended the last message about Kanye talking about a performance artist that Kanye said has influenced him. His name is Joseph Beuys. Okay, so if you remember that, in the performance art teaching, we ended with the last big influence on Kanye, Joseph Beuys. That was for a reason. We ended by talking about a well-known performance that Beuys did. It was called I Like America and America Likes Me, also known as Coyote. And it was a 1974 performance by Joseph Beuys. And I ended with that, talking about that performance specifically for the reason of setting up to talk about this. Now, look at this. Look at the comment about the symbolism of the coyote in the wiki article for this particular performance. Let's look at this quote. His selection of the coyote, a Native American symbol of transformation and trickery, invoked its native creation myth of the Promethean teacher teaching humans to survive. Okay, so they say this coyote is a symbol of transformation and trickery. Let's read another quote. Art and culture critic David Levi Strauss wrote an article about Beuys and the symbolism of the coyote. Here is a quote from the article. The coyote of the Coyote Tales is primarily a transformer, an agent of change, bringing order to chaos and chaos to order. He is the spirit of disorder, the enemy of boundaries. In much of Western North America, he fills the role of culture hero and trickster, found in virtually all traditional societies. He is an American Zeus, Prometheus, Orpheus, and Hermes, all rolled into one. Mating to create the human race, inventing death, stealing fire to give to humans, shapeshifter, androgyne, messenger, and guide to the underworld. In whatever guise, Coyote makes things happen. And this is from a paper that David Levi Strauss wrote called American Beuys. Now, this is talking about the symbol of the coyote that Beuys chose. And what did he say? This symbol of the coyote is a trickster symbol. And that is a spirit of disorder and the enemy of boundaries. The symbol chosen by Beuys of the coyote is known as a trickster figure. Another performance that Beuys did was called How to Explain Pictures to a Dead Hare, where he held a dead rabbit and talked to it. The rabbit or hare just so happens to be another trickster figure in a wide variety of African language communities, such as the Brer Rabbit. And that is also interesting because I just made a video talking about a shooting that just happened at the Chinese New Year festival. And we talked about how in this Chinese New Year celebration that in their Chinese zodiac, they are transitioning from the year of the tiger to the year of the rabbit. And the rabbit is a trickster figure. And I don't think that's a coincidence that it's also in the year 2023. Let's continue. So Boys used two different trickster symbols in his performances, the rabbit and the coyote. In the next quote from Strauss, we will see that not only can the trickster figure be an animal in various mythologies, but also a human in real life, a shaman specifically. In his role as trickster/transformer, the shaman in traditional societies acted as a safety valve, letting the air out of society's repressed fears. Boys often played a similar role. When German newspapers and magazines carried story after story about the escapades of Professor Boys, they most often characterized him as both ridiculous and dangerous. In his attacks on boys in America, Benjamin Buchloh refers to Boys at several points as a trickster, always disparagingly. Sometimes I'm not sure whether he's simply a fool or a very shrewd trickster, or perhaps a mixture of both. Again, from Strauss's paper, American Boys. But Boys himself, not only is the coyote called a trickster and the rabbit, but also Boys himself, especially in his role as a shaman, was called a trickster. So a shaman can be a trickster. Let's go back to a quote from the previous Kanye teaching. So in the last Kanye teaching about Kanye's love for performance art, I had this quote. Boys had adopted shamanism not only as a presentation mode of his art, but also in his own life. Although the artist as a shaman has been a trend in modern art, Picasso and others, Boys is unusual in that respect as he integrated his art and his life into the shaman role. From this paper, Gregory Ulmer. And, okay, so Boys adopted shamanism, and then what? The artist as a shaman. Okay, I want you to remember that. And I want you to also think of the word artist as, yes, someone who paints on a canvas or a performance artist, but also a musical artist, an actor, a performance artist, whatever it may be. Think of it in that context as artist, as a shaman. And he said even his life as the shaman role. So we have an overlap here of artist, shaman, and trickster. All words used to describe the man Joseph Boys. He was called artist, shaman, and trickster. Joseph Boys was a trickster figure. And Kanye is a trickster figure as well. He is an artist, a musical artist. You could apply that to his work in fashion as well. Takes artistic, creative sensibilities to do that type of stuff. He went to art school. But also, he's been playing his role as a trickster, trolling people. People don't know what to think about him. He's making crazy, wild, outlandish statements. What does it all mean? People don't understand. There's polarized reactions. That's all part of what happens when someone's a trickster. They play a role in a bigger picture. To better understand their role in the bigger picture, we need to understand more about the trickster. What is a trickster? Okay? So now we're going to depart from Kanye into the much bigger picture. And so now what we're going to see, what we're going to look at, is understanding more exactly what a trickster is. We're going to go over some definitions, and then we're going to go back in history and show some examples. And you might be shocked at some of the information that we look at about the subject. Okay? And we're not only just looking at the Wikipedia files. I just have those as a baseline. It's mainstream. You can go look at that. But we trace back the sources that they reference other academic papers. I've read a book about this. We have plenty of sources to back this up. A brief overview from the wiki page. In mythology and the study of folklore and religion, a trickster is a character in a story. It could be a god, goddess, spirit, human, or anthropomorphization who exhibits a great degree of intellect or secret knowledge and uses it to play tricks or otherwise disobey normal rules and defy conventional behavior. Every time I make a statement bold, this is something to remember about the trickster. They disobey normal rules and defy conventional behavior. Tricksters, as archetypal characters, appear in the myths of many different cultures all over the world. Lewis Hyde describes the trickster as a boundary crosser. That pops up again. The trickster crosses and often breaks both physical and societal rules. Tricksters violate principles of social and natural order, playfully disrupting normal life and then reestablishing it on a new basis. So before you reestablish things, you have to disrupt. That's what they do. And they have to violate principles, social principles. They have to violate and disrupt natural order. Often this bending or breaking of rules takes the form of tricks or thievery. Tricksters can be cunning or foolish or both. The trickster openly questions, disrupts, or mocks authority. Absolutely, they undermine authority. To get some more detail on the role a trickster plays, we will be quoting from a paper called Tricksters, Change Through Chaos. And I'll show the source of that at the end. Many cultures, if not all, contain trickster gods or trickster types. In mythology, folklore, religion, and even children's stories such as Little Red Riding Hood, we find glimpses of the trickster flouting social conventions and brewing disorder alongside discord. From many tales of tricksters, for example, the account of Ragnarok, wherein the trickster Loki ushers in the end of the world, we can see that death and destruction often accompany their mischief. In spite of this fact, cultures throughout the ages have been fixated by the character of the trickster. Now, just one point real quick. We're going to talk more about Loki later in the teaching. But if you notice, it talks about the trickster doing what? Brewing disorder, discord, mischief, confusion. These are all terms that I talked about over and over and over again in my teaching the author of confusion. And the Bible, how much the Bible speaks against those things and those that create those things. So that's exactly what we're talking about today. What do tricksters represent that makes them so very intriguing? In Transformations of the Trickster, literary scholar Helen Locke argues tricksters' trickery calls into question fundamental assumptions about the way the world is organized and reveals the possibility of transforming them. Tricksters do embody unpredictability and the inversion of natural order, inverting things, turning them upside down or backwards. When we hear the word trickster, we tend to think of a mischievous itinerant gods and spirits who play pranks on humans and other gods alike. Oftentimes, tricksters such as Hermes in Greek mythology and Legba in the Dahomean culture are also intermediaries for deities in the heavens and mortals on earth. As messenger for the gods, the trickster becomes a literal boundary crosser, while he or she moves between physical planes of existence. However, this role takes on a figurative sense when we consider the fact that tricksters quite often cross social boundaries, behaving with complete disregard for propriety. They don't care about social proper behavior in a social context. With their sometimes horrifying and repulsive actions, tricksters cross lines, breaking or blurring connections and distinctions between right and wrong, sacred and profane, clean and dirty, male and female, young and old, living and dead. And a couple things about that. First of all, this is something I talked about. Big point in the Author of Confusion teaching was about how the Bible makes distinctions over and over again. God makes distinctions between right and wrong, sacred and profane, male and female, all these other types of things. Over and over again, God makes distinctions. The trickster blurs distinctions. And what do we see today? Blurring of distinctions. Almost like there's a connection. While analyzing these tricksters or trouble lovers as symbols, we begin to recognize recurring personality traits, physical characteristics, and modes of behavior among tricksters or of different cultures. In fact, almost all tricksters have the same basic characteristics. We're going to look at a couple of those from this paper. In Barbara Babcock Abraham's A Tolerated Margin of Mess, The Trickster and His Tales Reconsidered, the author asserts that tricksters also typically tend to inhabit crossroads, open public places, doorways, and thresholds. They hardly ever have their own homes and are usually situated between the social cosmos and the other world or chaos. Okay? So a lot of times they inhabit crossroads, doorways, places that are sort of in between. They have an ability to disperse and to disguise themselves. Disguises come up a lot, masks. Are generally amoral or asocial, aggressive, vindictive, vain, defiant of authority, and then also exhibit a human/animal dualism and may appear as a human with animal characteristics or vice versa. And if we look at entertainment, there is a lot of that, of animals being given human characteristics. We'll talk about more about that later. Okay, the defining feature of a trickster, however, is that everything about his being contains dualism. He is never completely evil, nor is he ever completely good. His very nature is an expression of ambiguity and paradox, of a confusion of all customary categories, not clearly defined by the black and white groups into which humans sort the world. A trickster inhabits a gray limbo, existing as both a solitary individual and part of society. Now, I'm going to make one comment on that real quick. It is always taught about tricksters that they're supposedly not good or evil. They don't care about either one. Or they do good and they do evil, they do both, or it's a gray area. But in actuality, they are evil. They're absolutely evil. There's no such thing as, well, I do neither good or evil. And especially with the stuff that they do. That in it itself is a trick. It's a deception. But let's continue. So those descriptions were from this paper, Tricksters, Change Through Chaos, and this was a paper published by Trinity College. You can see the author right there. I have the links. Okay, let's continue. Now we will watch a brief clip of Joseph Campbell speaking about the trickster, taken from my show, which is called Star Wars, One World Religion of Antichrist, Joseph Campbell, Jesuits and Jesters. Now, this show I did about 5 years ago, and in this show, I talked about the huge influence that Joseph Campbell had on George Lucas in the making of Star Wars, and that a lot of Joseph Campbell's teachings about different religions and mythologies is found in the story of Star Wars. And in one part of the show, I show a clip of an interview where he talks about the trickster. And so, I just had this little section in that video. Little did I know I'd be doing a full teaching on this years later, but we have so much information, it's hard to ignore it all. So, very important. So we're going to set that clip up. We'll play a clip of that. Okay, so here's the clip.
Here.
There is a figure in American Indian myth that represents this power of the dynamic of the total psyche to overthrow programs. This is the negative aspect, and it's called a trickster. It's a very, very important figure in American Indian mythologies. In the East, in the forest lands of the Northeast and Southeast, it's the great hare, a rabbit. When you go west of the Mississippi in the plains lands, it's coyote. You get up in the northwest coast, and it's raven. These are smart, clever birds and animals. Now, it's a great puzzler to well-trained Christians to come across the trickster hero. because he's both a kind of devil and fool and the creator of the world.
All right, so that's the end of that clip. That guy definitely doesn't like God. But, all right, so that's just a little clip of him. If you want to go watch that whole show, go back there. You can see there's a little bit more I play about him. But, so he's talking about this character of the trickster. So we can see that this is, you see that he mentions some of those animals again. It's, the rabbit, the coyote, there was a raven, and all these other types of things. This is something, that is taught in many different cultures. And so, to learn more, we're going to examine different examples of tricksters in various cultures. And you're going to see something about this. You're going to see a lot of different things. And there's more to the story. What I want you to see, okay, before we examine this, is that this isn't just some thing where it's just, okay, they made up a story. Here's some story about a coyote or a rabbit or whatever, and trickster figures, and that all it is just some made up stories by a bunch of ignorant people from native cultures and all this stuff. You are dead wrong. There is much more to it. It's deeper, and I will show you what is going on with this. That I'll show you what is the deeper aspect to the trickster. Okay? So, tricksters in mythology and religions. Okay? Now, I'm going to explain this again. So, all these descriptions are backed up by a book all about tricksters, which I have read, called Trickster Makes This World by Lewis Hyde. Okay? I've read this, so this is all backed up by someone who is a scholar on tricksters. And so all the statements in here are 100% true about these different cultures. So don't worry, just because it's from the list of fictional tricksters from the Wikipedia file, it's all backed up. Okay? So we're not looking at every single example from the list, but we're going to look at some of the most popular ones and ones that stand out. And I want you to see some key statements that you really need to take in, that's going to teach about the bigger picture. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, first one is Anansi. Anansi, literally translate to spider, is an Akan folk tale character and the Akan god of stories, wisdom, knowledge, and trickery. The form of a spider is the most common depiction of Anansi. He is also sometimes considered to be the god of all knowledge of stories, taking the role of trickster. Okay, so right there, takes the role of a trickster. He's also one of the most important characters of West African, African American, and West Indian folklore. Originating in Ghana, West Africa, these spider tales were transmitted to the Caribbean by way of the transatlantic slave trade. Anansi is best known for his ability to outsmart and triumph over more powerful opponents through his use of cunning, creativity, and wit. Okay? So, this is a trickster deity from Africa. Okay, originating in Ghana. Now, followers of Haitian voodoo honor Anansi as a Guade Lua. The Lua are the spirits of the Haitian voodoo mythology. And if you want to know more about that, I actually interviewed someone who is the son of a voodoo priest. They're not involved with voodoo now. They moved away. They grew up in Haiti. They moved away from Haiti. But I have the interview up on my channel. And they talked about this, some of the practices that they do, and they talked about the Lua, different spirits. But this is one of them that came from Africa, that was integrated into voodoo. And so, one thing I want you to notice here, and you're going to see this theme, is that, using this as an example, Anansi is a figure that's depicted as a spider, right? It's like a character in mythology, but also that it's said to be a spirit. Okay? So a character in their mythology, but also a spirit. I want you to pay attention to that. So that's the trickster deity from Africa. Let's move on to the next one. Dionysus. This is from Greece. Now, some of these you might already know, but there might be some things about them that you never knew before. Dionysus, Greek god of wine, madness, and ecstasy, more than any other Greek god, he is associated with shape-shifting and taking on other identities, which is part of why he is associated with actors. Okay? So shape-shifting comes up with tricksters over and over and over again, and look at what it says. That's why they're associated with what? Actors. Almost like there's a connection between tricksters and actors. A thoroughly ambiguous person in personality, but also in his androgynous figure. One can never know exactly what he will do next. So androgynous, what does that mean? Neither male nor female. The distinction between male and female blurred, as in Baphomet. The Romans call him Bacchus. Okay? So Dionysus is Bacchus. Dionysus in Greece, Bacchus in Rome. The Romans called him Bacchus for a frenzy he is said to induce called Bacchia, as Dionysus Eleutherios, which means the liberator. His wine, music, and ecstatic dance free his followers from the self-conscious fear and care and subvert the oppressive restraints of the powerful. Paying attention? So what they do, their music, wait a second, their music subverts the oppressive restraints of the powerful. Music that subverts power structures. Yeah. His thyrsus, which is a fennel stem scepter, sometimes wound with ivy, dripping with honey, is both a beneficent wand and a weapon used to destroy those who oppose his cult and the freedoms he represents. There was a cult of Dionysus. They worshipped him. There's a lot of, and you look up, there's the mysteries of Dionysus. They talks about all the rituals that they went through. A big one was wine that they would drink, but they say there might be psychedelic substances put into the wine, and they worshipped Dionysus. Now, what's interesting about his thyrsus, his scepter, is it was topped with a pine cone. And if you watch my message, The Mistress of Witchcrafts, Rome's Occult Knowledge and Power, you can find out more about that. I have an entire section in that teaching all about the pine cone and how that is said to represent the pineal gland in the occult. So you see the importance of that. So he had the pine cone on top of his thyrsus, the scepter, and it just so happens there is a giant pine cone outside the Vatican. And also on one of the staffs of the popes. Let's continue. Those who partake of his mysteries are believed to become possessed and empowered by the god himself. Now, believe it or not, this was openly declared in so many cultures all throughout history. Native cultures had no problem. They didn't hide the fact that they did this. They don't hide the fact that one of their goals in their rituals is to become possessed by certain spirits. They have no problem admitting that. They want to be possessed. They do everything they can to be possessed. That's why they drink alcohol, they take drugs, they dance, they do music, they do meditation, they do all kinds of rituals and witchcraft in order to become possessed by these spirits. And Dionysus is no exception in Greece. They want to become possessed by this god himself. So they want to become possessed by Dionysus, who is considered what? A trickster figure. Here's another one. It's a female. Eris. Eris, which means strife, is the Greek goddess of strife and discord. Her Roman equivalent is Discordia. Okay? So in Greece, it's Eris. In Rome, Discordia. The most famous tale of Eris recounts her initiating the Trojan War by causing the judgment of Paris. The goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite had been invited along with the rest of Olympus to the forced wedding of Peleus and Thetis, who would become the parents of Achilles, but Eris had been snubbed because of her troublemaking inclinations. She therefore, as mentioned at the Cypria, according to Proclus, as part of the plan hatched by Zeus and Themis, Eris tossed into the party the apple of discord, a golden apple inscribed with the ancient Greek word kaliste, which means for the most beautiful one, or to the fairest one, provoking the goddesses to begin quarreling about the appropriate recipient. Okay, so this goddess causes chaos, causes discord by throwing this apple of discord into the party. And so this goddess Eris, or Discordia, but in this story, Eris, is a trickster. It's a trickster figure, trickster deity. Now, there are some that do actually consider her their goddess even to this day, modern times. We're not going to get into that today, but oh boy, could I go down a huge rabbit hole with that. But we're going to move on here. Let's continue to another example. Essu, or Eshu. This is an interesting one. Essu or Eshu is an Orisha, which is a spirit in the Odysee or religion of the Yoruba people. Okay, the Yoruba religion in Africa. Okay, and Yoruba religion is the basis for a number of religions in the New World, notably Santeria, Umbanda, Trinidad Orisha, and Candomblé. Okay, so a lot of that can trace. A lot of these religions and practices trace back to the Yoruba religion in Africa. And Essu is described as a god of trickery, crossroads, misfortune, and chaos. Starting to see the pattern here, okay? Now, remember what I said earlier, that there's characters in mythology, there's animals, different figures, and these types of things, but these are also called what? Gods. Or a spirit. It says Eshu is a Orisha, or a spirit, also described as a god, a spirit. Trickster spirit. God of trickery and crossroads and chaos. Eshu deliberately fostered violence between groups of people for his own amusement, saying that causing strife is my greatest joy. Now, I want to stop there to make an interesting point. What's interesting about this Eshu thing is that there's actually, even in the past few years, this big campaign by, I believe, some people from Nigeria, because this is where a lot of it's based out of, and they got really upset because there was a man, I believe he was Nigerian, in the 1800s, and he made a Bible translation, and he translated the Bible from, English to the Yoruba language, or vice versa, whatever it was. But what they got upset with him about later on down the line was that he translated Eshu as devil, or Satan and devil. And then that became a huge bone of contention, especially in the past few years, especially with woke people, agendas, critical theory, these types of things. Those in academia get a hold of it, and they made a huge big deal of it. And there was a huge protest about it, and activist campaigns. They made a website about it, and t-shirts saying Eshu is not Satan, and getting mad at anyone that says Eshu is Satan. They really don't want you to think Eshu is Satan. And so, but one of the things they say, I want to point this out, okay? One of the things they said, and if anyone from that religion, that culture, would just so happen to watch this, they say that, well, you can't say he's evil, he's not the devil, he's not evil, he's a neutral God. This is what they try to say. That he's neither good nor evil. He's just sort of a messenger and intermediary. But the problem is this right here. They know this for a fact, that he deliberately cause trouble between groups of people, and says that causing strife brings him joy. Okay? Now, I want you to understand that is evil. Okay? Now, it is not a bad thing. It's not an evil thing to say that anything from any culture is bad or not, because you don't have an objective standard for truth to say anything is bad or good. Okay, if you don't have that, then you have no basis to tell anyone what they can and can't do, what they can and can't judge, especially. But we do have the one true God of all creation, who gave us a revelation in the Word of God, which is the objective standard for truth and morality. And in that book, it says that God hates he that soweth discord among brethren. That God hates strife, those that cause strife and mischief. And that is said to be sin, is said to be evil. Therefore, eschew is evil. Okay? And if you are worshiping that God, that spirit, you do need to repent and turn away from that idolatry and turn to Jesus Christ, who is more powerful than him, by the way. Okay? So I just wanted to put in that side note there. Eschew is also said to have brought the art of divination to mankind. Also, not good. That's an evil thing. Okay? Multiple times in the New Testament, witchcraft is condemned, sorcery is condemned, and then if you look at the details of what falls under the category of sorcery and witchcraft in the Old Testament, you go to Deuteronomy chapter 18, and it says divination. It says divination is forbidden, is an abomination to God. You are not supposed to go and try to get information from spirits. That's bad. That's not good. Okay, so that's not neutral. It's evil. Let's continue. The name of Eshu varies around the world. In Haitian voodoo, the name is Legba. Now, this is where we're going to get even crazier. Okay? So, the equivalent of Eshu in Haitian voodoo is Legba, or Papa Legba. Now, check this out. Papa Legba is a lua, or a spirit in Haitian voodoo, Winti and Louisiana voodoo, who serves as the intermediary between the lua and humanity. He stands at a spiritual crossroads and gives or denies permission to speak with the spirits of Guinea, and is believed to speak all human languages. Okay, I want you to pay attention to one important thing. Papa Legba is a spirit. Remember, this is a trickster deity. Okay? Papa Legba is a spirit that does what? Stands at the crossroads. It is a fact that we see multiple times in that the trickster in multiple cultures is at the crossroads. But specifically, Papa Legba is said to be at the crossroads. Now watch this. In Benin, Nigeria, Togo, and Ghana, mainly among the Yoruboid and Gabi peoples, Legba is viewed as a young and virile trickster deity, often horned and phallic, and his shrine is usually located at the gate of the village in the countryside. Okay, so it's said again to be a trickster deity. Now check this out. Ready for this? In his study of the Delta blues, Robert Palmer discusses the appearance of Legba in blues lyrics and lore. Palmer notes that Legba can be referred to / identified as the devil, Papa Legba, and the black man throughout the history of the blues. This is also made clear in ethnomusicologist Bruno Bloom's text for the CD box set Voodoo in America, where reference to Papa Legba, deity of roads and crossroads, in Robert Johnson's iconic song Crossroads is explained. Okay, now I'm going to give you a quote from this source. Okay, so this is from the text from the CD box set Voodoo in America by Bruno Bloom, and a reference to Papa Legba is made in relation to Robert Johnson. Now, if you don't know who Robert Johnson is, he is the guy that has been written about and talked about for many decades. He's infamously known as the man who sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads in order to gain the ability to play the guitar really good. Okay? And this has been sung about, written about. Everybody knows about this Robert Johnson, right? But he was an actual guy that did influence a lot of very famous and influential blues and rock musicians, such as the Allman Brothers, Eric Clapton. A lot of these guys were influenced by Robert Johnson. Okay? He is foundational to blues and rock and roll. Robert Johnson is. But what's interesting about this is, here's the thing I want you to know before we read the quote. One more thing. The story is always told this way, okay? The story is always said, Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads. But what I want to show you today is that it was actually more specific than that. Okay? So let's take a look at this. As for the legendary Crossroad Blues by Robert Johnson, etched in Texas as the splendid black cat bone of Lightning Hopkins, it is significant of the unholy union of martyred voodoo and despotic Christianity, of black religion and the worship of white oppressors, while falling on his knees before the, quote, Lord, in his lyrics, the founder of modern blues, the slide guitar virtuoso, actually addresses a syncretic voodoo deity. Okay? So, I want you to see this, okay? That Robert Johnson is said to have addressed a voodoo deity. Now, who would that deity be? Indeed, for the initiate, the crossroads is the place where destiny is sealed, where the pact with the devil of the Faustian myth is signed, the god of crossroads being Legba, one of the most powerful in the tradition of voodoo. It was specifically Legba. Robert Johnson, said he knew so much because he sold himself to the devil. I asked him how. He said, if you want to learn to play whatever you want and create songs yourself, you pick up your guitar, go to where the roads cross like this at the crossroads. Be there and be there a little before midnight so you know you'll be there, or that he'll be there. Take your guitar, play a song alone. A tall black man will walk over there. He will take your guitar and tune it. He'll play a song, give it back to you. That's how I learned to play whatever I want, Clarence Gatemouth. Clarence Gatemouth Brown, Dirty Word at the Crossroads, 1953, okay? And I have the link here. It's archived from the web archive, okay? So, think about this for a second. So, like I said, everybody says Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads, but it was actually Papa Legba, the voodoo trickster deity. So, if you think about this, really think about this. He's said to be the founder of blues. And this, rock and roll came out of this as well. And if you trace it back, it comes back to the influence of a trickster deity. That's very significant. Very, very significant. Okay? This is why I'm trying to tell you, you have to understand tricksters. Okay? Let's continue. I'm gonna further strengthen the relationship of Legba to music with another point. Check this out. Because some artists know about this. The musical group Talking Heads made a song named after him, Legba. The song can be found on their 1986 album and soundtrack to the David Byrne film of the same name, True Stories. Okay? So the group Talking Heads Talking Heads have a song called Legba. Here's another thing, another point. Twister, a ritual reality in 3/4 plus overtime if necessary, is a 1999 play by Ken Kesey, we'll talk more about him later, loosely based on L. Frank Baum's novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and the 1939 film version, The Wizard of Oz. The play also features the West African deity Legba. Okay? Legba is in this play, and it's loosely based on The Wizard of Oz. Okay? Now, Ken Kesey himself is a trickster figure. So this is significant. It wasn't just put in there for no reason. Okay? This is a fact that is known if you have knowledge of the occult. Okay. So that's that for Legba. Let's move on to the next one, Hermes. Hermes, okay? Let's look at this one. Hermes, messenger of the gods in Greek mythology, or Mercury in Roman mythology, okay? Hermes in Greece, Mercury in Rome. Patron of travelers, boundaries, and thieves, notably stole a herd of cattle from Apollo in his youth, but then invented the lyre, which is a stringed instrument, and gave it to Apollo as payment. Okay? Stole a herd of cattle from Apollo. So he's a thief and a trickster. Hermes is regarded as the divine trickster, about which the Homeric hymn to Hermes offers the most well-known account. Okay? Again, known as a trickster. Check this out. This is very interesting. It is this double motion that makes Hermes at once an enchanter and a disenchanter. In his enchanting phase, he often begins by going after the border guards, for if they have their wits about them, he cannot operate. Earlier, we saw how he cast a lazy forgetfulness over the watchdogs guarding Apollo's cattle. In speaking of shame, we saw how he mesmerized Argus with song and story, then sealed the giant's sleeping eyes with the magic wand. Hermes drops the sentinels who watch the peripheries into a stupor, and impermeable boundaries become porous. That's from Trickster Makes This World by Lewis Hyde. So, this is huge to understand. Okay? There is something that you need to pay attention to here, especially if you're a Christian and pastors. Okay? Listen. Pastors are supposed to be the border guards. They're supposed to be the sentinels. The Bible says they watch over you. They're supposed to watch for your souls. Okay? That's what pastors are supposed to be. But the trickster, what does he do? He casts a lazy forgetfulness over the watchdogs. He mesmerizes them with song and story. He puts them into a stupor, into a sleep. Why? So that he can cross the boundaries. So that he can operate and come and steal from the herd. That's what the trickster does. That description of Hermes perfectly describes what has happened to the pastors of today. They have been mesmerized by the trickster and his entertainment. With the border guards distracted, the trickster has free rein to do what he wants to the herd. Distracted by the entertainment of the trickster. What have I been saying? The music, the art, the movies, the actors, right? It's related to the trickster. And that all, you put it all together and you have the entertainment. That's the trickster's domain. And what does he use it to do? To memorize, to put the watchdogs into a stupor. And all the while they're mesmerized and in a stupor, he comes into the herd and he snatches them out. Takes as much as he wants. Whatever he wants to take, he takes. And what are the watchdogs doing? Nothing. Not paying attention. And you know, there's a good passage in the Bible about this. Isaiah chapter 56, verse 9. All ye beasts of the field come to devour, yea, all the beasts in the forest. Come on in, beasts of the field. His watchmen are blind. That's today. His watchmen are blind. They are all ignorant. They are dumb dogs. They cannot bark. Listen, sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. They're not awake. They're not paying attention. Why? Because they're entertained by the trickster. Yea, they are greedy dogs which can never have enough. They are shepherds that cannot understand. They all look to their own way, every one for his gain from his quarter. Come ye, say they, I will fetch wine, and we will fill ourselves with strong drink, and tomorrow shall be as this day, and much more abundant. They're not paying attention what's going on. They're looking in the wrong direction. They're blind. They're sleeping. Mesmerized by the trickster. Those are the pastors of today. And that's why the trickster is having a field day running around freely causing chaos in the churches. Because the sentinels are down. There's nothing restraining the trickster. There's no protection. There's no boundaries. They're all blurred. They're all broken down. All layers of protection. And that's what happens. Moving on to the next one from Mexico. Now this one, it's kind of a crazy looking name, but you pronounce it Huehuecoyotl. Huehuecoyotl. And this is a gender-changing coyote god of music, dance, mischief, and song of pre-Columbian Mexico and Aztec mythology. Now, it's a trickster deity in Mexico. Now, again, you see these things that come up over and over again? Gender-changing, blurring distinctions between genders, or androgynous. Also, coyote came up again. What else came up again? Obviously, mischief and trickster, but also music, dance, song, all these other types of things. Again, trickster associated with music, entertainment, arts, all those types of things. Befitting a trickster, he is the patron of uninhibited sexuality and often engages in trickery against the gods with camaraderie among mortals. He is also the god of deception. Yes, tricksters are all about deception. They set traps. Masters of baiting people and hiding the bait. Because if you see the bait, you'll see the trap, right? They hide the trap so you don't see it. And they get better and better at their traps over the years. And now if we transition this to spirits, it's intergenerational. So imagine how good they could get when you consider that factor. And but you see, also want to remember that the trickster can be a spirit, a god, but also a person, a shaman. Because the trickster spirit works through the shaman, the trickster human. And they inhabit them, they possess them, they speak through them, they use them, they direct them. And then that transitions over to art and music and all these other things. Okay? But again, there's another trickster deity, very similar description again in Mexico and the Aztec society, Aztec culture. And now we'll move on to Loki. A lot of people have heard of Loki. And, different variations of Loki have been portrayed in newer movies and cartoons and these types of things. I even think that they're in one of those superhero movies like Avengers or something. I haven't seen any of those movies, but that's what I've seen from what I've read. And so there's different depictions. I'm actually going to talk about where he's referenced in some other films. It's going to be pretty interesting. So let's look at Loki. Loki in Norse mythology is again a cunning trickster. Okay, so Loki is another trickster deity. this time from the Norse. The Vikings have a trickster deity. A cunning trickster who has the ability to change his shape and sex. Again, a shapeshifter and can change genders, androgynous. Although his father was the giant Farbauti, he was included among the Aesir tribe of gods. Loki was represented as the companion of the great gods Odin and Thor, helping them with his clever plans, but sometimes causing embarrassment and difficulty for them and himself. He also appeared as the enemy of the gods, entering their banquet uninvited and demanding their drink. Loki is considered a trickster god, known for being neither fully good nor evil, since his main aim was always to create chaos. Well, guess what? That is evil. This is what is so ridiculous, and they say it in all the cultures, and especially in psychology. Oh, they don't get me started with them. The Marxists in psychology, these people have the most twisted brains. The most twisted way of thinking. But anyways, they say it's neither good nor evil. Well, guess what? Causing chaos, intentionally creating chaos is evil. Yes, that's evil. Okay? So it's not neutral. But again, he was known, his aim is to create chaos. Now, here's where we're going to jump off into some interesting stuff about Loki in modern day times, more modern day times. The Mask and Loki. Now, there was a movie that came out in the 90s, you might remember, called The Mask with Jim Carrey. In the movie The Mask, Jim Carrey plays a character named Stanley Ipkiss. And he's sort of a guy that's doesn't have a very fulfilling life. He's kind of bullied. He's very low status. No one really pays attention to him, cares about him. Then all of a sudden he discovers this mask in the movie. While looking over the harbor bridge in despair, Stanley tries rescuing a humanoid figure in the waters, but finds it to be a pile of garbage, concealing a wooden mask. Upon returning to his apartment and donning the mask, he transformed into a green-faced, zoot-suited trickster known as the Mask, who can cartoonishly alter himself and his surroundings at will. Okay, so they admit, yeah, he's a trickster. So Jim Carrey turns into a trickster figure, which, by the way, he loves playing those type of characters. But he turns into the mask. He turns into a trickster figure after he puts the mask on. But there's more. With newfound confidence, Stanley indulges in a comical rampage, supposedly comical, rampage through the city, humiliating several of his tormentors, including his temperamental landlady, Agnes Peenman, and the mechanics who gave him the faulty car. He takes revenge on people. Stanley consults Dr. Arthur Newman, a psychiatrist who has recently published a book on masks, and deduces that the mask may be a creation of Loki, the Norse god of mischief, and its powers are only active at night. That's right. They say in the movie that the mask may be a creation of Loki, the trickster god. Now, again, we see this trickster spirit and deity through all these cultures throughout the world. Loki is one of the big examples. And Hollywood just so happens to put this trickster deity in here and has someone put on a mask so that they can become basically possessed by a trickster spirit. And then they are entertaining you with his actions, his pranks. Oh, isn't it so funny, all the stuff that he's doing? But he's taking revenge, he's doing crazy stuff to people. And in fact, there's a comic book that this was partially based on, actually, where he was way more sadistic and violent, and they actually toned it down for the movie. Now, to further strengthen this, then there was a sequel to The Mask called Son of the Mask. Now, I guess this movie was an absolute failure, but that doesn't matter because what it shows is, again, the connection between the Mask and Loki. Loki appears again. Let's look. In The Son of the Mask, Dr. Arthur Newman is giving a tour of the Hall of Norse Mythology in Edge City's local museum. Newman mentions that Loki, the god of mischief, created the mask. He created the mask and unleashed it on Earth to spread chaos among mankind, and that those who wear it are granted his powers. When Newman mentions Loki's imprisonment at his father Odin's hands, a stranger becomes furious and transforms, revealing himself to be Loki. They actually depict someone turning into Loki in the film. The tourists panic and flee, but Newman stays to argue with Loki, who takes the mask in the display case only to realize it is a replica. In anger, he removes Newman's face and puts it in the case, disposes of the arriving authorities, and storms out of the museum. Okay? He does something very violent, Loki did. Okay? So, again, a connection between Loki and the mask, and they were depicting this deity in this movie. Here is another fact about Loki that makes a strange connection to Kanye's appearance on Alex Jones. Now, I'm just gonna show you the facts, and we'll talk about it after to try to explain this. But okay, so we have this thing about Loki. Let's learn another fact about Loki. So, if you're watching the video, I have a picture here, and it's an old picture from the 18th century, and it's a depiction of Loki with a fishing net. Okay, Loki with the fishing net, per Regan Small, as depicted on the 18th century Icelandic manuscript, okay? And it shows a picture of Loki with a net. The meaning of Loki's name. So I have the source here. Many scholars have argued that the name Loki means knot or tangle, and his trickster figure has certainly been compared to the conception of a spider, which is interesting when you consider Anansi from Africa was a spider trickster deity. But anyways, be compared to the conception of a spider that creates a web out of nothing. For instance, when Loki ran away from Asgard to avoid being punished for causing Baldur's death, he hid in a house on top of a hill that had 4 doors, one pointing north, south, west, and east. At day, he turned himself into a salmon and swam into the lake below, and at night he sat at the fire weaving a fishing net so he could catch some fish to eat. He managed to hide here for a while, but Odin would eventually spot his hiding place, and just as Loki was caught in his own web of lies in the past, so was finally caught in his own fishing net in the lake by the Aesir. Okay? So Loki is said to have invented the fishing net. Okay? Now, why did I bring this up? Well, we're talking about trickster deities and this conception of the role of the trickster, and I talked about how people can be tricksters, and I also talked about them wearing masks a little bit. We'll talk more about that later, but they wear masks. And I talked about people being tricksters, though, fulfilling that role, artists being tricksters. And one person I mentioned was Kanye. Kanye playing the role of a trickster. Now, something that's very, very strange is Kanye brought a net to Alex Jones's show to do his Net and Yoo-hoo bit about Benjamin Netanyahu. And I have a picture right here. Now, I just want you to think about this for a second. Kanye brought a net, and he brought a bottle of Yoo-hoo because he was trying to do this comedy bit where he was pretending to be Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of Israel. And so he got a net and a Yoo-hoo, like Netanyahu. And that was all it was supposed to be. But isn't it really a weird, strange coincidence that he's acting as this trickster figure and Loki is credited with creating the net and he brings a net to Alex Jones? Now, I don't even know. I'm not saying that Kanye knew what he was doing when he did that. But maybe something else did that guided him to bring the net, to do that little skit. Because it's very, very strange. Strange coincidence. Let's continue. Trickster roles in native cultures. Now we're going to go back to something called clown societies. Okay? We're going to get into something called clown societies. Because now we moved on from we looked at some examples. Like I said, there's a ton more we could look at. We looked at trickster gods, trickster deities in different cultures, trickster spirits, and we see there's many examples in cultures all over the world, very similar characteristics of these trickster deities. And you see what they do, you see what they're associated with, you see their description. And so we talked about, the animals and stories and mythologies and about the people, but now we know about the spirits and the gods. And these trickster deities, people ask them to inhabit their bodies. Hey, they go to the crossroads and try to make deals with them. But they want them to possess tricksters, to possess their trickster deities, to possess their bodies. The shamans do, and whoever else. And we see that it was depicted, this was actually depicted in The Mask. That it gets possessed by a trickster spirit. And what happens? Well, they're an actor. And what does he do? In the movie, he does all kinds of different voices and characters. He's a shapeshifter in the movie. He does the literal shapeshifting. His face can do all kinds of crazy stuff, but then he plays different characters. One moment he's a French guy. Next moment he's a gangster. He plays all different types of characters. He's constantly shape-shifting, exactly as a trickster does. So the trickster spirit inhabits the person. They play the role of the trickster, and the trickster spirit helps them to do that, and they're using them to entertain people with pranks and jokes, but also can turn sadistic in acts of revenge. Okay? But it also, remember everything else that we learned about them as well, the subverting of order and causing confusion and chaos and strife and discord and all these other types of things. So tie all that together as we move now to talk about these clown societies in native cultures, which you may have never heard of in your life, but we're going to learn about them now, okay? All right, so let's read about these clown societies. And you'll see how it ties into everything. Clown society is a term used in anthropology and sociology for an organization of comedic entertainers. One example is heyoka, or clowns, who have a formalized role in a culture or society. Sometimes clown societies have a sacred role to represent a trickster character in religious ceremonies. Okay? So again, now we see again that a trickster can be a human being, and in this instance, a trickster is used in a religious ceremony. Okay? In the sense of how clowns function in their culture, a clown shows what is wrong with the ordinary way of doing things. A clown shows how to do ordinary things the wrong way, quote unquote. Okay, so again, a lot of times you see with this trickster character, it's an inversion of everything, right? By doing ordinary things the wrong way, the clown reveals what would otherwise be perceived as the serious or true state of things in a different fashion. In the case of the Zuni Clown Society of the Puebloians, one is initiated into the Nehwekwe order by a ritual of filth eating, where mud is smeared on the body for the clown performance, and parts of the performance may consist of sporting with mud, smearing and daubing it, or drinking and pouring at one another. It actually it's way worse than that. But just a quick little note on that. This is exactly what Clown of the band Slipknot does while performing on stage, okay? Now, is it a coincidence that there is this band Slipknot, right? This new metal band's been around for a long time, since the 90s. But they have multiple different members of the band, if you don't know who they are, and they wear a bunch of masks. One of them wears a mask, a clown mask. And this guy is a severely mentally disturbed person, and you can see in documentaries about the band and interviews with members of the band, other members of the band, and they talk about how before performances he would do really disgusting things, smear disgusting things on his body, even his own waste on his mask, spread it on his mask, throw it at the other guys in the band. And this was part of sort of a ritual they would do. And I talked about this in another show about how he used to have a dead crow in a jar. And he'd smell it. He'd open up the jar and smell it before performing, because he said gets him into another mind state, that other world that they go into when they're on the stage. But it just so happens that it's very similar to this ritual of filth eating and smearing filth on their bodies that these clown societies did. The sacred clown, look at that word there, sacred clown, and is apparently antisocial behavior. Again, what are these bands? Antisocial. They have one of their songs is the Heretic Anthem. And he goes, if you're 555, then I'm 666. What's it like to be a heretic? It's talking about, obviously he's saying the mark of the beast, 666, but he's saying, this being an outcast. They talk about, saying things against the world and society, a lot of antisocial stuff, right? So the sacred clown is apparently antisocial behavior, which is condoned in Indian ceremonies. It seems outrageous to Western people who believe it is savage for a culture to institutionalize behavior that seems to be psychotic and perverted. And this is from a paper called The Indians America Loves to Love and Read by Catherine Shanley, published in 1997. Now, a couple things about this. First of all, when it says institutionalize, it doesn't mean send them to a mental institution. It actually means make them part of an institution, the clown society, that institution. Saying that these natives, they say, of course these people, these academics are like, we think it's, Western people think it's weird to institutionalize psychotic, perverted behavior. Yeah, it is. It is psychotic and perverted behavior. And I have every right to say that it is. What you do, though, is the job of the academic is to normalize the psychotic and the perverted. You think journalists are bad. Academics are even worse. And this is one of the main things that they do. So yeah, it is normalizing psychotic and perverted behavior. But anyways, that's associated with the clown, the sacred clown and the clown society. While in their costume, clowns have special permission from their society to parody or criticize defective aspects of their own culture. Okay, they have permission to criticize the culture. Another aspect that is common to the trickster figure. Okay, so that's just in general about clown societies. Now we're looking at a specific example, Pueblo clown. Okay, this is in America. This was, right? Pueblo clowns. Sometimes called sacred clowns. There's that again. Why are clowns associated with the sacred, with the spiritual? Isn't that weird? By the way, in case you didn't know, modern day clowns that they had at children's birthday parties, that never existed in history before Bozo the Clown was invented in the 40s. Never in history was there ever a time where there were these clown characters that were specifically for children's entertainment. It was only till after the creation in modern day times in the 40s of Bozo the Clown. Okay? So before that, we have these clown societies, we have these native cultures, Pueblo clowns, sacred clowns. They are what? Jesters, tricksters in the Kachina religion. You might have heard of that before. Practiced by the Pueblo natives of the southwestern United States. It is a generic term, as there are a number of these figures in the ritual practice of the Pueblo people. So clowns, Pueblo clowns, sacred clowns, are used in ritual practices. Each has a unique role belonging to separate kivas, or what's a kiva? A secret society. Wait a second. Clowns? Part of a secret society? Weird. More on that later. And each has a name that differs from one mesa or pueblo to another. The clown performs monthly rituals. Summer for rain, November for the gods, for curing society, black magic. Clowns do rituals and sometimes black magic. In order for a clown to perform meaningful social commentary via humor, the clown's identity must usually be concealed. The sacred clowns of the Pueblo people, however, do not employ masks, but rely on body paint and headdresses. But in other cultures, tricksters often wear masks or are associated with masks. Okay, remember we talked about Loki in the mask, but if you read about other tricksters, they are associated with wearing masks. And again, isn't this weird about the guy from Slipknot? He's called clown, he wears the masks, rubs filth on himself. And they sing about occult stuff. I'll be talking more about them in the future. There's even way more behind that. But they guess what? They have knowledge of the occult. Let me tell you. So, that's that for that. Now, okay. Next one, Heyoka. The Heyoka is a kind of sacred clown in the culture of the Sioux, Lakota and Dakota people of the Great Plains of North America. The Heyoka is a contrarian, jester, satirist who speaks, moves, and reacts in an opposite fashion to the people around him. It's a trickster, right? But again, Heyoka is what? A sacred clown. But what do? They move and react in an opposite fashion to everyone around them. They do what's opposite. They invert everything, do things in reverse, backwards. Only those having visions of the thunder beings of the West, the Wakinyan, or what is known as thunder spirits, thunder birds. I remember one of the recent shows that I did. I forget what we were talking about, but someone mentioned, that in the Rocky movie that he was wearing a shirt that had this looked like a phoenix on there. It was actually a thunderbird on there. So that's interesting as well. And you see this symbolism in the hotel that was used in the movie The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. So, thunderbirds. But anyways, those having visions of thunder beings, only those having those visions and who are recognized as such by the community can take on the ceremonial role of the Heyoka. Okay, so again, what are these clowns associated with? What are they involved with? Ceremonies. They have a ceremonial role. They have to have visions of spirits, and they're used for these rituals. The Heyoka is thought of as being in charge for above and below, sounds like as above, so below, or are more in charge for the dead instead of the living. This manifests by their doing not always everything like the others. For example, if food is scarce, the Heyoka may sit around and complain how full he is. During a baking hot heat wave, a Heyoka might shiver with cold and put on gloves and cover himself with a thick blanket. Similarly, when it is freezing, he might wander around naked complaining that he's too hot. What is this doing? Inverts the natural order of things. He's doing the exact opposite of what's appropriate. That's what tricksters do. In addition, sacred clowns serve an important role in shaping tribal codes. Unbound by societal constraints, Heyoka are able to violate cultural taboos freely and thus critique established customs. Okay? That's what they're... Notice, tricksters are always allowed to violate cultural taboos. What is usually unacceptable to everyone in the culture, the trickster does it. He violates it every time. All right, so that's a little bit about those clown societies. We see the Pueblo clowns, the Heyoka. There's a bunch of other ones, by the way. Again, like I said, I can't include everything. There's a bunch of other sacred clowns, clown societies throughout all these native cultures. That's been around long before modern day clowns. Before even the circus clown and all this stuff, it was before that. And by the way, look at the important role that they played in ceremonies and rituals. It wasn't just for entertainment. Okay? Now, here's a little bit about clowns. A little bit more about clowns in general. Okay? So check this out. Some other stuff you might not know about clowns. Clowns, and this is all going along with the theme of Trickster. Okay? Clowns have been traced as far back as Egypt's Old Kingdom 5th dynasty some 4,500 years ago. Whatever long it was. It's a long time ago. Thousands of years ago in Egypt, clowns. Nearly 4,000 years ago, one of China's rulers filled his court with clowns. Clowns in Egypt, clowns in China. Many of his successors continued the tradition. Say was a, I'm probably saying that wrong, but anyways, was a jester in the Chinese imperial court in 300 BC, and is remembered as saving thousands of lives when he teased the emperor out of having the other side of the Great Wall whitewashed, thus preventing the death of multitudes. This is from the International Clown Hall of Fame. Okay? So, clowns in Imperial China, 300 BC. To Navajo, Pueblo, Hopi, and Zuni peoples all had ritual clowns. All had ritual clowns. All these societies, why do they have these ritual clowns? They all do. Who served an essential role in social and sacred ceremonies through both crossing and maintaining boundaries. Crossing boundaries. In doing so, the clowns anchored the ceremonies in the immediate today experience of the people. Charles presents an example of a Zuni clown performance observed in the early 1900s. Check this out. And you see the theme again. Each man endeavors to excel his fellows in buffoonery and in eating repulsive things. That's what these ritual clowns did. They ate repulsive things, such as bits of old blanket or splinters of wood. They bite off the heads of living mice and chew them. Which, by the way, there's an artist who started off doing performance art who did this exact thing. His name's Joe Coleman. He did a performance piece where he bit the heads off of mice and spit them into the audience. Also blew himself up with fireworks. And a bunch of other crazy stuff. Tear dogs limb to limb. Eat the intestines and fight over the liver like hungry wolves. The one who swallows the largest amount of filth with the greatest gusto is most commended by the fraternity and onlookers. And this is from The Clown and Archetypal Self Journey by Michael Balla. And also sounds like Fear Factor, Jackass, bunch of stuff like that. They eat disgusting things. They make people eat disgusting things. Another one would be Ozzy Osbourne, who bit the head off a bat on stage, spit it out. Some people try to say, oh, it wasn't real. Yeah, whatever. He did a lot of crazy stuff. Okay? A lot of stuff like this. The point is, eating repulsive things, disgusting things. And by the way, I cut this paragraph off because it got even more so vile and disgusting, I didn't even want to put it in here. It's actually even worse. Okay? And what's interesting about this is done also in Satanism. Aleister Crowley taught that you do this, and they practice this. Eating filth. All types of disgusting bodily substances they would eat and drink. Now it's interesting, the overlap there, right? But there's a long history of them doing these types of things. But anyways, the sacred ritual clowns would do that. Modern day clowns and the circus will be dealt with another time. Okay, so we're not going to cover that. The most recent clowns that everybody talks about. There is something to talk about there, but we're going to save that for another time. I'm just showing you, that we're going along with this trickster figure throughout history and showing you that the important role that they played, not as just entertaining and, they're here to tell jokes and stuff. They actually had a function in rituals, ceremonies, called sacred clowns. And yet they're trickster figures. And we see the same type of themes and characteristics over and over again as the trickster deities in other cultures, as the trickster animals, and all this type of stuff. All right, so let's continue. Tricksters in theater. Now, this is very interesting. In fact, there's an even bigger impact that this next section has, this particular play and the writer, but I'm probably going to get into more of that later in other teachings. But what we're going to focus on here, there's so many things we could focus on, but this is one of the biggest ones, and I also want to make sure we see the importance of recent times. And what I mean by recent is 1800s, 1900s, those types of things. Okay, so look at this. Tricksters in theater, the importance of Ubu Roy. Okay, so what's that? Ubu Roy. Ubu the King, or King Ubu. King Ubu is the character in this play, Ubu Roy, is a play by French writer Alfred Jarry. Okay, that's the guy's name, Alfred Jarry, and he was then 23 years old when he wrote it. I just highlighted that's associated with chaos. But anyways, so Ubu Roy was written by Alfred Jarry, very influential person. Very influential, Alfred Jarry. A very weird person. It was first performed in Paris in 1896. Okay? Performed in Paris, France. In 1896. I'm not going to try to pronounce all this. It was in a specific type of theater, Nouveau Theater. Today, the Theater de Paris. The production's single public performance baffled and offended audiences with its unruliness and obscenity. Now, what does it sound like? Offended audiences with its unruliness and obscenity. Trickster. Let's continue. Considered to be a wild and bizarre comic play, significant for the way it overturns cultural rules, norms, and conventions. Trickster. It is seen by 20th and 21st century scholars to have opened the door for what became known as modernism in the 20th century, and as a precursor to Dadaism, Surrealism, and the theater of the absurd. And man, there's a ton of stuff to get into there. That's for another time. But regardless of that, listen to the influence that this had. Open the door for modernism? A precursor to surrealism and Dadaism and all these super powerful cultural forces. And they were influenced by this play, Ubu Roy. Major figures in the surrealism movement like Andre Breton, I'm not going to say these the greatest, but Antonin Artaud and Jean Cocteau said they were greatly influenced by Alfred Jarry. They all said it. All these surrealists said they're influenced by Alfred Jarry, and especially this play, Ubu Roy. Why is that significant? Well, check this out. On opening night, December 10th, 1896, okay? Right before the 20th century, we have this. On opening night, with traditionalists and the avant-garde in the audience, King Ubu, played by Firmin Gamere, stepped forward and he said a curse word. Okay? He said something that was obscene. That was the first word out of his mouth. A quarter of an hour of pandemonium ensued. Outraged cries, booing, whistling by the offended parties, countered by cheers and applause by the more bohemian contingent. Okay? The place erupted. In fact, at the end, there were riots in the theater. They rioted. And Alfred Jarry thought it was hilarious and he was laughing about it. And eventually the play was banned and they couldn't even perform it live anymore. They weren't allowed to in France. Okay? But it was so shocking and offensive. Nobody ever any seen anything or heard anything like this before. Is it a coincidence that this boundary was crossed in 1896, right before the turn of the century? You can read more about Ubu Roy on page 30 of the book, Our Dramatic Heritage, Volume 6 by Philip George Hill. I'll get the source right there. Okay? So Ubu Roy had a big influence. Obviously a trickster. Alfred Jerry was a trickster figure. He wrote a trickster character in his play, King Ubu, and this obscenity, overturning of rules and conventions and all these other types of things, absolute embodiment of the trickster. And then, with this performance in the theater, is having this impact on society, which is exactly what they want, which is everyone to be upset, most people to be upset and shocked. But then some of the other people be like, oh yeah, this is great, let's do more. Let's have more of this, let's do more extreme. And then after people are shocked, they kind of fades away a little bit. Then eventually, you know what happens? People start to accept it, they get numb to it, they get desensitized to it. Now it's accepted. And now it becomes normalized. So before there's ever the moving of goalposts, the changing of boundaries, it always is met with an initial reaction of shock. People being upset. Oh, I can't believe they said that. They did this. Oh, it's horrible. Everyone is so offended. And then some time goes by. People don't care as much. And then eventually they don't care at all. And then eventually they accept it. And then eventually they celebrate it. And it's all a part of the culture. And it's integrated. But it all starts with the trickster who is willing to be seen as a fool, as crazy, as obscene, as a psychopath. They are willing to accept the backlash and the reaction, and they throw that culture bomb right in there, and they get the reaction exactly what they're looking for. And they're laughing when they see everyone upset. But they know what they're going to eventually get, and they keep on going. And they're persistent. So anyways, very big impact from Ubu Roy. But what's interesting is this story is a parody of Shakespeare's Macbeth and some parts of Hamlet and King Lear. Okay, so we see this in theater. King Lear by Shakespeare was mentioned. Now, Shakespeare has these characters called fools, Shakespeare's fools. They're trickster characters. Again, we're going to examine this one, the fool in King Lear, as a specific example in Shakespeare's King Lear. The Royal Shakespeare Company writes of the fool. The fool does not follow any ideology. He rejects all appearances of law, justice, and moral order. Sound familiar? He sees brute force, cruelty, and lust. He has no illusions and does not seek consolation in the existence of a natural or supernatural order. Doesn't like order. Which provides for the punishment of evil and the reward of the good. They don't care about that. Lear insisting on his fictitious majesty seems ridiculous to him. All the more ridiculous because he does not see how ridiculous he is. But the fool does not desert his ridiculous, degraded king and accompanies him on his way to madness. The fool knows that the only true madness is to recognize this world as rational. That's what they believe. That, of course, and here's a quote from Isaac Asimov, Guide to Shakespeare. He says, that, of course, is the great secret of the successful fool, that he is no fool at all. Because, that's very important to understand, because you have to be very intelligent to play the fool. And those that advance culture in these certain directions are willing to be seen as a fool, even though they're not really, in order to achieve certain goals. Okay? So that the great secret of the successful fool is that he's no fool at all. That's the trickster. Let's continue. And there's a whole, if you go to the wiki file on Shakespearean fool, there's a huge list of all these fool characters in Shakespeare's plays. There are many Shakespearean fools we could look at. This is another example of trickster and their impact on culture. Okay? That, again, we see this, we could go so many different examples we could look at in Shakespeare. And, look at the impact that Shakespeare has had on culture. One of the most important authors in history. Now, a couple side notes that's very interesting about Shakespeare, though, is that there's some people out there, actually occult historians, who say there's a lot of evidence pointing towards Shakespeare actually not being a real person, and that it was actually Francis Bacon who was Shakespeare. And if you look, there's actually a lot of occult concepts hidden in his writings. And one other thing that they add to that, some people do, is that his name, Shakespeare, is actually a reference to a papal bloodline named Breakspear. Very interesting. But we will continue. Back to Ubu Roy, a little bit more about Ubu Roy, right? What's the origin of Ubu Roy? Or should I say King Ubu, right? That's what I mean. The character of King Ubu who's in Ubu Roy. Well, we find out. There's another play that Alfred Jarry made called Caesar Antichrist. Yeah, that's the name of it. Caesar Antichrist is a short 1895 play which came out before Ubu Roy, played by the French writer Alfred Jarry. The third act is an early version of Jarry's next play, Ubu Roy, the main character of which, Pere Ubu, appears here as the Antichrist. So, Pere Ubu, who became King Ubu in this play, is the Antichrist. Same guy who plays King Ubu in Ubu Roy. This play begins with a startling sequence of images of garbled Christianity from which Ubu emerges as the new Messiah. So King Ubu, one of the most infamous trickster characters, is also the Antichrist. I just thought that was very interesting. Ubu Roy is considered a descendant of the comic, grotesque French Renaissance author Francois Rabelais and his Gargantua and Pantagruel novels. Now, side note, we will talk more about Rabelais another time. Right now, I will mention one fact. And I talked about this in another teaching, actually, one of the Jesuit teachings. Aleister Crowley took the name Abbey of Thelema for his place in Sicily and the saying, "Do what thou wilt," from Rabelais. Okay? Crowley took the name of that place and "Do what thou wilt" from Rabelais from his Gargantua and Pantagruel novels. Rabelais had a place in there called the Abbey of Thelema. Okay, so this guy was like a Catholic, by the way. Catholic author. And Crowley took it from there. But anyways, there's a whole other thing about that. But Ubu Roy is considered a descendant of Rabelais, his writings. The character King Ubu influenced also, one last thing about King Ubu, influenced the character Oogie Boogie from A Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm going to show you some pictures to show that. So actually, Alfred Jarry made a wood carving of King Ubu. And if you can see that in the screen, it's like a heavy-set character with it looks like a pointy hood over their head. Which you know what that sounds like. But anyways, so that's King Ubu. And then it's pretty much the same thing with Oogie Boogie in Nightmare Before Christmas, who is also, again, a trickster character. So that's another interesting fact. Another thing tying together this with going back to Shakespeare for a second, this is a pretty wild thing that you probably never would have guessed. So, and it's tying to, again, we're tying together trickster stuff to entertainment right now to Hollywood. Touchstone. Touchstone Pictures Incorporated was an American film production label of Walt Disney Studios, founded and owned by Walt Disney. Okay? So Touchstone, owned by Disney. Feature films released under the Touchstone label were produced and financed by Walt Disney Studios and featured more mature themes targeted towards adult audiences than typical Walt Disney films, okay? And, you know, if you grew up watching movies, you know a lot of these films, very well-known movies made by Touchstone. Now, why does that matter? Well, just so happens to be the same name as Touchstone is a fictional character in Shakespeare's play As You Like It. And who is Touchstone? Touchstone is the court jester of Duke Frederick, the usurper's court. And so Touchstone was a jester. He was a trickster character in Shakespeare's play. And it just so happened that Disney's Touchstone Pictures, that's what they chose for the name. Almost like they were making a reference to Tricksters. See, this goes way deeper than you could ever possibly imagine. That's what I'm trying to show you. Let's continue. Jesters. Moving on to jesters. Another trickster figure. A jester. Court jester. Fool or joker. Bellatrones in Rome. It's another version of it, was a member of the household of a nobleman or a monarch employed to entertain guests during the medieval and Renaissance eras. Jesters were also itinerant performers who entertained common folk at fairs and town markets. Now, a lot of you have heard of jesters. Oh, okay, I know about jesters, but I'm going to show you something you may not have seen before. Again, jester's privilege. Think about this. Jester's privilege is the ability and right of a jester to mock freely those in power without being punished. Without being punished. Now, punishment back in the day means you're dead. They just put you to death. They go bring you to a dungeon and chop your head off, right? Hang you publicly, whatever it is. So modern day times, if someone like, gets censored or something like that, that's not the same thing. They're still pretty much free. But the jester's privilege, they can freely mock those in power without punishment. Jesters were also, a couple other things you may not have ever heard of. Jesters were also used for psychological warfare. What? Yeah. The fool's most extraordinary role, however, was their occasional use in war. It was a common sight when two armies were preparing for battle to see the jesters of the opposing leaders cavorting on foot or riding in front of the troops. These brave fools would tell jokes and mock the enemy to raise their own army spirits or provoke the enemy into a premature attack. For fools had a psychological role in warfare. Okay? So that was another role of a jester you may not have heard of, used for psychological warfare. Again, always try to think about this in modern day times. Could trickster figures be used for psychological warfare today? I believe so. Let's move on to the next thing. Jesters were also assassins. Really? Yeah. Some fools, however, performed much darker duties than a bit of housework. Thomas Skelton was the last professional fool at Muncaster Castle near Ravenglass in Cumbria. Skelton was in the service of the Pennington family, who had owned the castle for 800 years and was believed to have been the model for the royal jester in Shakespeare's King Lear, which we talked about. However, legend tells that Skelton was also an assassin. For Hellwise, the unmarried daughter of Sir Alan Pennington, had taken Dick, a carpenter's son, and one of the servants at the castle as a lover. When one of the Hellwise's other suitors, a local knight, discovered the affair, he enlisted Skelton to take his revenge. The knight asked Skelton to behead Dick with his own axe while he slept, and the jester was more than happy to oblige, as he believed the young man had stolen money from him. In the aftermath, he bragged about his crime. "I have hid Dick's head under a heap of shavings," he told the other servants, and he will not find that so easily when he awakes as he did my shillings. Okay, and you can read more about that at the link here from historycollection.com. Many Roles of the Medieval Fool. So, yeah, also used as assassins, used for assassins, psychological warfare. What I'm trying to show you is one of the most important aspects of the trickster is, obviously they do pranks and they use humor and these types of things, but humor is disarming. It makes you let your guard down. Think about it. Humor makes you let your guard down. And that can be very dangerous if there is a serious side, a deadly side, an evil side to the trickster. Because if the trickster can make you laugh, you let your guard down. Meanwhile, they can accomplish their evil plans while you're laughing. And you're not paying attention. Your guard's down. Another thing to consider. Shriners. Yep. So there's in case you don't know, there's a secret society called the Freemasons. And then they have one group of Freemasons called Shriners. You have to be a Freemason to be a Shriner. And the Shriners have shrine clowns. Remember what we talked about earlier? All the clown societies through history. And they said one of them, the Pueblo Clowns, they were part of Kivas. They were part of a secret society. Well, guess what? Shriners Secret Society, they have shrine clowns. And then even crazier than that, the Shriners also have an inner order. And you know what the name of the order is? The Royal Order of Jesters. Now you're starting to pay attention that there might be more to this jester thing, trickster thing than you thought. In 2008, a little bit more about the jesters. In 2008, 4 public officials from Western New York, including a state Supreme Court justice, 2 retired police officers, and a law clerk, were convicted of human trafficking for transporting a prostitute for the Royal Order of Jesters. According to federal prosecutors, the jesters frequently employed strippers and prostitutes at their parties, with some of the prostitutes being illegally transported over state lines for jesters' events. And also sometimes we hear underage. Yeah, that's what the jesters, the Royal Order of Jesters, are involved in. And these are just the ones that got caught, by the way. And were they just random people from society? No. Police officers, state Supreme Court justice, law clerk, all caught up in that. And they were jesters. Very interesting. Now, there's a lot of stuff that has been said about them that they're involved in, none of which is good. But what you see is an association with having fun and mirth and pranks and all this stuff with stuff like this. Also, very evil things. Another interesting fact, this is pretty crazy, is they have an icon. The icon of the Order of Jesters is the Billiken. The Billiken is a charm doll created by an American art teacher and illustrator, Florence Pretz of Kansas City, Missouri, who is said to have seen the mysterious figure in a dream. What's interesting about this is the Billiken is also the official mascot of St. Louis University and St. Louis University High School, both Jesuit institutions located in St. Louis. So that means the same mascot of these Jesuit schools is the same mascot of the Royal Order of the Jesters, a Shriner Freemasonic order. And I'm going to show you a picture here. This shows Royal Order of the Jesters. They show a jester with some masks, which are usually associated with drama and entertainment, acting, right? Theater. And then they have the Billiken figure, which kind of looks like some weird kind of baby, kind of man figure, and has a crown on his head tilted to one side, which says mirth, and they use that word mirth in association with their secret society, Royal Order of Jesters. Very, very shady group, secret society, and ties together with this trickster theme. But anyways, that's another thing about jesters. One more thing, we're gonna keep going. Mention one more group, one more category, and then we're gonna fast forward to modern day times, and we're gonna end with some absolutely crazy, crazy stuff. So let's continue. Harlequin. Harlequin. So anyways, before I continue on to that, jesters, another trickster figure, obviously. Okay, so we got clowns, we got jesters. Now we got Harlequin. Harlequin, Italian is Arlecchino, is the best known of the Zani or comic servant characters from the Italian Commedia dell'arte associated with the city of Bergamo. The Harlequin is characterized by his checkered costume. His role is that of a light-hearted, nimble, and astute servant, often acting to thwart the plans of his master, pursuing his own love interests, Columbina, with wit and resourcefulness, often competing with the sterner and melancholic Perio. He later develops into a prototype of the romantic hero. Harlequin inherits his physical agility and his trickster qualities, as well as his name from a mischievous devil character in medieval passion plays. We're going to learn more about that in a second. But I just want to show you, this is another trickster figure, Harlequin. Okay? Now check this out. So Harlequin is a trickster figure. It's similar to a jester, right? But check this out. The name Harlequin is taken from that of a mischievous devil or demon character in popular French passion plays. It originates with an old French term, Harlequin, first tested in the 11th century by the chronicler Orderic Vitalis, who recounts a story of a monk who was pursued by a troop of demons when wandering on the coast of Normandy, France, at night. These demons were led by a masked, club-wielding giant, and they were known as Familia Harlequin, or Familia Harlethingi. Okay? Familia Harlequin. That's where you get Harlequin. Okay? So Harlequin coming from a group of demons led by a masked club-wielding giant? The Harlequin family? This medieval French version of the Germanic wild hunt, Mesne de Harlequin, has been connected to the English figure of Signing, or Host King. Harlequin was depicted as what? A black-faced emissary of the devil, roaming the countryside with a group of demons chasing the damned souls of evil people to hell. Okay? So Harlequin doesn't have good origins. And it's a lot of association with demons and devils, black-faced emissary of the devil. Oh, are you saying that tricksters could be emissaries or messengers of the devil? Yeah, absolutely. The physical appearance of Harlequin offers an explanation for the traditional colors of Harlequin's red and black mask. Okay? Oftentimes they have these checkered patterns, red and black masks, right? Now, something interesting about this, just a little side note, I want to talk about these colors for a second, because this popped up a few times. It popped up with clowns too, actually. Let's talk about these colors, because there is something else to that. These colors seem to be a reoccurring theme. Some writers have mentioned the significance of these colors, using the clown's red nose on a white face as another example. There was another writer that talked about this, and they gave a hint. They wouldn't explain it, but they're like, yeah, there's significance to this red nose on the white face, and they actually used a word. They used a specific word instead of red, and the word was rubido. I'm going to tell you about what that is in a second. Okay, so the significance being symbolic of the magnum opus, or what is known as the great work in alchemy. Okay, 4 colors are tied to this alchemical process with different names, symbols, and meaning given to them. Okay? And these colors are negrito, which is the blackening or melanosis, albedo, the whitening or leucosis, citrinitas, the yellowing or xanthosis, and rubedo, the reddening, purpling, or iosis. And that's in alchemy. Okay, so in alchemy, they're talking about this process of what they call the great work, the magnum opus. And it starts with the blackening, and it goes from black to white. Sometimes it goes and then to yellow to red. Sometimes it just goes straight to red. Okay, but these are stages in an alchemical process. So, but if you think of it like this, what they're saying is the blackening is like, that's a putrefaction, that's death, that's destruction. And then it goes through the different process, and eventually to the transformation is ending with the red, the reddening, the rubedo. So the reason that that's significant, if you think about it, is if you think about that process in action in society and in cultures, using that alchemical process, going through the blackening, the white, the red, and using that to as a technique of transformation, tactic of transformation in alchemy. So pretty interesting. But anyways, now we're moving on to the final section, and we're going to be talking about, of course, the Joker. The Joker, the ultimate trickster. Okay? Now, we've gone through history. Like I said, we could go hours and hours and hours talking about all these things. We're just taking a brief tour, believe it or not, through history, and showing you that, starting in modern day times, going all the way back, showing these trickster figures, the animals, the deities, the gods, the spirits. We talked about the jesters, the harlequins, the clowns, the sacred clowns. All these trickster figures. And we see that is with us today. It's such an obvious example as the Joker. And of course, this has been written about. Many people admit it, but there's actually even more behind this than you could possibly imagine. And it's pretty wild what I'm going to show you. So let's get into it. Joker, the ultimate trickster. In his comic book appearances, the Joker is portrayed as a criminal mastermind. Introduced as a psychopath with a warped, sadistic sense of humor, the character became a goofy prankster in the late 1950s in response to regulation by the Comics Code Authority, before returning to his darker roots during the early 1970s. The 1990s introduced a romantic interest for the Joker in his former psychiatrist, Harley Quinn, who became his criminal sidekick and girlfriend before finally escaping their abusive relationship. What does that sound like? Clear reference to Harlequin, that we talked about. Since the Bronze Age of comics, the Joker has been interpreted as an archetypal trickster. Okay? It's clear as day he's a trickster character, displaying talents for cunning intelligence, social engineering, pranks, theatricality, and idiomatic humor. Like the trickster, the Joker alternates between malicious violence and clever, harmless whimsy. Also, one of Joker's names is Jester of Genocide. Now, I'm going to play a clip here, another clip from my show of Mark Hamill, who has played the voice of the trickster, actually. So I'm going to get that clip set up. All right, let's play this clip.
Listen, if you've played the trickster and the Joker, as I have for so many years, the upside is nobody takes anything you say seriously. And that's a good thing, because it's liberating. You're a jester. You're there for fun. And that's what I
He said, by the way, he's played the voice of the Joker on the Batman cartoon. I didn't know that was started all the way back in the 90s. I don't know if you guys knew that. He said, I played the role of the Joker, the Trickster, the jester. What's great about that is no one takes anything you say seriously. The joker, the trickster, and the jester. What is he talking about? He's telling you right there, what did Joseph Campbell say? The character of the trickster. It says in the Fool tarot card, what does it say? It says it's the jester. Okay? And the Fool, the jester, the joker, the trickster, it's all the same thing. They have the joker. Guess what? The regular playing cards are based on the tarot cards. That's why they have the joker card in there. The joker is the Fool and the jester. It's the same thing. All right, so that's that clip. Again, from 5 years ago. But so we see Mark Hamill. He said he played the role of the trickster his entire career. He did the voice of the Joker a lot. So it's just interesting there with him doing the voice of the Joker. He admits trickster as well. And he actually literally also played the role of a comic book character called the Trickster many times, both in live action and as a voiceover in cartoon format. And then, if you go look up the wiki file on the Fool Tarot card, you can see it describes exactly what that's about, ties in with that again. Again, that is another overlap with this, which we're not even going to go into detail about. But there is a tarot card called the Fool, and it's the embodiment of this, of the trickster. And I have a quote about that, actually. I'm going to read right now by Ken Kesey. And he talks about the Fool Tarot card and the Joker, tying that together. Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters. Now, if you don't know who he was, he wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He wrote the book, and then he made a movie about it with Jack Nicholson in it, which is interesting because he also played the Joker. Think about that. But he was involved with this group, the Merry Pranksters, and they actually went around the country dosing people with LSD. And they're associated with the Grateful Dead and some other mind control projects. But we're not even going to talk about that today because there's all kinds of crazy stuff. But we're going to look at his quote here about the Joker and the Fool Tarot card. So it's from this ParisReview.org interviewer. What connection is there between Ken Kesey, the magician prankster, and Ken Kesey, the writer? Kesey. The common denominator is the Joker. That's what he says. The Joker is the symbol of the prankster. Tarot scholars say that if it weren't for the Fool, the rest of the cards would not exist. The rest of the cards exist for the benefit of the Fool. That's pretty crazy statement to make. The Fool, by the way, shows a knowledge of the occult. The Fool in tarot is this naive, innocent spirit with the rucksack over his shoulder, like Kerouac, his eyes up into the sky, like Yeats, William Butler Yeats, and his dog biting his rump as he steps over the cliff. We found one once at a big military march in Santa Cruz. Thousands of soldiers marching by. All it took was one fool on the street corner pointing and laughing, and the soldiers began to be uncomfortable, self-conscious. That fool of Shakespeare's, the actor Robert Armin, became so popular that finally Shakespeare wrote him out of Henry IV. So, just think about this, what he's saying here. First of all, he shows you the connection between the Joker and the Fool Tarot card and the Trickster, right? But he says something interesting. He gives an example of a military march of soldiers and one person mocking them for them to become uncomfortable and self-conscious. And what he is showing, again, is the power of humor, of mockery, and that it is subverting order, sobriety, right? Think about what the military soldiers marching, think about what that represents. Order, hierarchy, all this stuff. All it takes is one trickster to mock, to undermine that. Now, it might not happen every time, but it did in that case. And he was signaling something to you that he actually has a much deeper knowledge of what they do to overthrow things in society and invert the natural order, and what they have been doing for so long. He was giving you a little hint. But anyways, that ties those together, and also the Fool tarot card and the Joker. Okay, the Joker. Batman movies with the Joker. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the Batman movie, The Dark Knight. Okay, so The Dark Knight featured a mentally disturbed and dark Joker played by Heath Ledger. And I'm going to give you one quote from that Heath Ledger's Joker says in the Batman movie. Check out what he says. This is the Joker talking. It's the schemers who put you where you are. You were a schemer. You had plans. Look where it got you. I just did what I do best. I took your plan and I turned it on itself. Look what I've done to this city with a few drums of gas and a couple bullets. Nobody panics when the expected people get killed. Nobody panics when things go according to plan, even if the plan is horrifying. If I tell the press that tomorrow a gangbanger will get shot or a truckload of soldiers will be blown up, nobody panics, because it's all part of the plan. But when I say that one little old mayor will die, everybody loses their minds. Introduce a little anarchy, you upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. Now, what I want you to see here, please, do not be naive. Please do not bury your head in the sand. Don't look away. Don't take the blue pill and go back to sleep. I want you to face this and look. I want you to think about all the history and the information that we've talked about all the way up until now. For them to put this trickster character in this movie and to have him say this line, and you think this doesn't have an impact on society, you're out of your mind. You are delusional. This is so intentional, and there is so much behind this. I'm showing you the depth behind this. And they basically just say it right in your face, but because people are so brainwashed and ignorant, they don't even understand what it means. Because you barely learn anything in school. You don't learn about barely anything in churches. So it's easy to take advantage of people. Control them, brainwash them, take advantage of them. What's the Bible say about the devil? Let Satan get advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Well, certainly a lot of people are ignorant of his devices. Okay, so he says, introduce a little anarchy, you upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. That's what the trickster does. He's an agent of chaos. Let's continue. Jack Nicholson warned Heath Ledger about playing the Joker. This is a documented fact, not a conspiracy theory. Fact. Even there's video footage of Jack Nicholson saying this. I've seen the video. I remember years ago. So the 70-year-old Oscar winner was dining at the Wolseley restaurant in London when a photographer told him about Ledger's death. Okay? After this movie, Heath Ledger died. Okay? And when they told Jack Nicholson about Ledger's death, this is what happened. After saying, that's awful, Jack added, I warned him, and refused to elaborate. And he literally says, I warned him, and walks away. Warned him about what? Warned him about playing the Joker. About what it would do to his mind. And did you know that people in the media try to write, in entertainment media, journalists, they try to whitewash this now, and they try to spin it and say, oh, no, he was perfectly happy during that time. They try to pretend like it didn't affect him. Okay, they really don't want you to know. But Jack Nicholson said, well, I told him. I warned him. Now we're going to fast forward to the Joker movie. Okay, so there's a bunch of Batman movies, right? So there was the one in the 80s. There was the Batman movie with Jack Nicholson playing the Joker. He was kind of more goofy, but there was some hints in there as to what the trickster's role is. For instance, they go into the art museum and they're throwing paint and stuff over priceless works of art. Sound familiar? Ruining art. What does that represent? The old order. The beauty, they turn grotesque. The old order, they overturn, destroy it. That's the trickster. And even though it looks kind of goofy and funny, they play funny music and they're dancing around, there's a much deeper message going right under your nose, right in your face. Then we see the depiction of the Dark Knight and the Joker. I'm sorry, the depiction of the Joker in the Dark Knight. That was a little bit darker. But he says this type of stuff. Then we have in 2019 an actual Joker movie where the main character is the Joker. And let's talk about that. And by the way, this was a huge movie in society, in the culture, in case you didn't know. A ton of people, even people that hadn't watched movies in a long time, said they went to go see it. Joaquin Phoenix was chosen to play the Joker. That's the actor that was chosen. What's interesting about that? Well, a little bit of background. Joaquin Phoenix was born with the last name Bottom. The family was part of the Children of God cult, which did that. You ever heard about them? They sent the women out and they did flirty fishing. Very, very strange stuff. And traveled to South America as missionaries for the Children of God cult. After leaving the cult, the family changed their last name to Phoenix, okay? So it wasn't born with the last name Phoenix. The family decided to change the name to Phoenix after the bird, which, by the way, you go back and watch my video called Kanye and the Phoenix Death Ritual. I do a big section talking about the occult symbolism of the Phoenix, which Manly P. Hall explains in detail in his book, Secret Teachings of All Ages. It's an occult symbol used a lot in entertainment. But anyways, his family takes on the name Phoenix, so they used a man whose family took on the name Phoenix to play the Joker. Watch my teaching on Phoenix Death Ritual for more of that, like Kanye and the Phoenix Death Ritual, okay? Check that out. Kind of a strange overlap, right? So let's continue. Joaquin Phoenix did performance art and trolled the world for 2 years to promote a film. Again, now we have performance art, we have trolling. Joaquin Phoenix has played the role as a trickster figure before he ever did the Joker role. Here's a little bit about that from an article about what he did. No one seemed particularly surprised when Casey Affleck, director of I'm Still Here, admitted that his brother-in-law's documented descent into drug abuse, possible mental illness, and physical deterioration as he sought to kickstart his rap career was all for show. An experiment in blurring the lines between fiction and reality that Affleck described as the performance of Phoenix's career. Phoenix, in playing an unpleasant version of himself, was able at the very least to challenge people to react, even if they weren't entirely sure why they were letting him get under their skin. He was, in essence, trolling the world. We have the link to the article here. Okay? Phoenix, Joaquin Phoenix, trolled the world for 2 years. And what'd they say? He's crazy, he's mentally ill. Oh, look, he's trying to rap, this is cringe. What is he doing? No one understands it. Now, I want you to see the significance of this because this sounds just like Kanye. And they talk trash about him. Oh, he's crazy. He's cringe. And you can even read posts that people made on discussion boards way over 10 years ago. And they were saying, oh, I just want this guy to go away. Next thing you know, 10 years later, he does the Joker and everyone's singing his praises. Oh, he's so great. I love him. He's the best actor ever. And everybody changed their tune. So the masses are wrong, once again, as they usually are. Okay? But their initial reaction is, oh, he's mentally ill, he's cringe and all this stuff. But then they're singing his praises and they love him a little bit after that. Okay? So for those of you who think that you know where everything's going and you think you can predict, you don't know squat. You're listening to everyone else. That's the worst thing to do. The worst thing to do. The crowd knows nothing. Okay? So check this out. That's what Joaquin Phoenix, he did that performance art. He was trolling. He was being a trickster in real life. Now, back to the movie. One thing I'm going to focus on in the movie. So in the movie, he's like, it's basically the origin story of the Joker, right? And they have it be this guy where he is a loner, he's a weirdo, he's a very low status person in society, has sort of seen as like being mentally ill, can't control his laughter, things like that. And then things happen throughout his life that keeps pushing him and pushing him over the edge. Eventually, he turns into this Joker character, puts on makeup, but he does a stand-up comedy routine. Nobody laughs. It's kind of cringe. It's on television. But the talk show host sees it, wants to bring him on, basically to bring him on TV to mock him. And so Joaquin's character comes on the late night show and he puts on Joker makeup. And this is basically the beginning of him embracing this Joker character. In the Joker movie, he's on the show. The Joker shoots a TV host played by Robert De Niro in the head on live TV. And then right after that, riots break out in the streets because this was broadcast on live television. Everybody sees the late night show talk show host. They see him get shot in the head on live TV. And so the Joker's action triggers chaos, anarchy. Okay? Remember, his role as the trickster. Now, let me tell you what this symbolism is, because there is symbolism here. Robert De Niro represents the old order. How is that? Well, Robert De Niro has played... What you have to do is you have to examine different characters that people have played throughout their career. A lot of times he's played a mafia guy, but actually he's played a CIA character as well. In the Fockers, you say, oh, it's a comedy and stuff like that, but he was a CIA guy. And actually, a lot of times the mafia has worked with the CIA in history, multiple times. In fact, they tried to get the CIA tried to use the mafia for assassinations. But anyways, not going to go down that rabbit hole. But it's kind of tied together with that old order, the old world order, right? He's a good representation of that. You could even say old Hollywood, too, right? Represents that old golden era of movies that everybody loves. And then it's shot in the head on live TV. And what's interesting about that is a lot of people say that entertainment is dead today. Because it's been infected with woke culture and all this stuff. It's ruined all the movies, so it's dead. Well, guess what? He represents that old golden era of entertainment, and it's shot in the head right in your face. And they're saying, yeah, it's dead. We killed it. Joaquin is the trickster agent of chaos who kills De Niro as a catalyst to open up the floodgates of destruction, paving the way for the new order. Okay? Clearly the Joker is a trickster, agent of chaos, as the Joker has said before. Killing De Niro, killing the old order. He overthrows and destroys the old order, opening up the floodgates of destruction, triggering riots, all this destruction. And that is what paves the way for the new order, because you can't have the new order without the destruction of the old. And so the trickster is triggering that destruction and that chaos that they need. And you want to know what's interesting about that? Anarchy explodes in the streets after, right? Right after that happens. Anarchy explodes in the streets, riots, and all these types of things. The rioters look to the Joker as an inspirational figure as their leader. They look up to him. He's the one that paved the way. Well, who is he? He's the trickster. He's the Joker. He's the jester. He's the sacred clown. He's helping to bring us from the old order to the new order. But it's through chaos and it's through destruction. The only way through to the new order is through chaos and destruction. And the trickster paves the way. He punches through the wall, breaks down the boundaries and the barriers. And he says, I'm the one to kick the door in. Here we go. Boom. And then everybody follows suit. But it has to be the trickster figure that leaps out first and leads the way. Now, you want to know what else is interesting? The Joker movie came out in October of 2019. Riots erupted across America summer 2020. Did they not? Did they not? The Joker movie came out in October of 2019. Shows a character shooting someone in the head, and riots break out in the street, and then riots break out in the streets of America in 2020. The spirit of the trickster is alive and well in the world today, and works through the arts, music, movies, influencing culture. You know what Kanye said in a meeting with Odysee? I'm the king of culture. You might mock him. Oh, you might laugh. You might underestimate, but that would be your mistake. In fact, one of the best advantages of being the fool is people underestimate you. And then you can do whatever you want. Isn't that what Mark Hamill said? He said it's liberating. You can say whatever you want. People won't take it seriously. Even when it is something serious. You fly under the radar. So who's the real fool then in the end? Also, Alex Jones has played this trickster role. He even dressed as the Joker multiple times on his show. I got a picture right here. Multiple times, Alex Jones puts on makeup, dresses himself up like the Joker on his show. Is he not a trickster figure who's going against the order? You might say, oh, but he's against all the corruption and all the evil of the New World Order and all the other type of stuff. Is he? Great. Did you know right now he has someone on his website promoting occult practices as a solution to the New World Order? Telling us that we need to practice white magic and things about natural law and creating our own realities by using occult powers for good and using the secrets of the elite. Promoting that on his site. Alex Jones said on Michael Malice's show that Kanye told him he is like the Joker and they want to burn the system down. Kanye actually said this to Alex Jones. Alex Jones admits it on camera. I'll play the video clip. You can hear it yourself. All right, so I'm going to play the clip right now and listen to what Alex Jones says.
And so I really think this was all an exercise in trolling. In fact, Fuentes has now come out and said he and Kanye are the Joker, and they're burning down the whole system, and that's what they intend to do. But
Hear that? Did you hear that? Alex Jones says Nick Fuentes told him and Kanye are like the Joker and they're burning the system down. See, I'm not making up theories here, guys. This is out of their own mouth. Out of their own mouth. We're like the Joker burning the system down. I mean, it's just right in your face. Even Michael Malice himself, he was just on that show too. He's a trickster figure himself. He's the most popular anarchist in the world. He is an anarchist that loves trolling, wants to see the system burn, everything, all the system destroyed. And what's interesting is he likes to post pictures of himself as the Joker. I got a picture right here. He had, I think it was like a family member paint his face like the Joker, but he posted online on Twitter in response to people. He thinks it's funny, but he's portraying himself as the Joker, this trickster character again. And it just keeps popping up over and over again. Now, what's the conclusion of all this? Where are we headed? A new order. What will they use to get us there? Chaos. How will they bring in the chaos? Tricksters, among other things. They'll use a lot of different things, but tricksters are a big part. Tricksters have been used for a long time, but they increased greatly in the 1800s and the 1900s, which in turn greatly increased the amount of chaos, disorder, and confusion in society. Huge increase in the 18 and 1900s. Especially the 1900s was the century of tricksters and chaos in so many more ways than you could ever imagine, especially when you look at the forces. Okay? Think about it. There has never in history been the impact, the worldwide impact, than in the 1900s when the impact of Hollywood with the movies going around everywhere and the television in every home, all that entertainment, and the music industry, especially when they invented the records, everybody could buy and have music in their home. After rock and roll was invented, there's nothing to compare that to in history, the impact that had. And underlying it all is the spirit of the trickster. And so, like I said, it's been here for a long time. It's always had that influence, but it has manifested more than it ever has in the recent century. More than ever. And that's for a reason. This is beyond humans to coordinate, okay? There is no way. You can talk about conspiracies all you want. There's plenty of conspiracies. I've talked about them. I prove them. I have a video. I have multiple videos about all this stuff. But it's even beyond the humans to coordinate. Even though humans do coordinate, there's something beyond that. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. That's what the Bible says. Let's read it. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Spiritual wickedness. Rulers of the darkness of this world. Trickster spirits. Working through trickster shamans to make trickster entertainment. To create chaos, confusion, disorder, overthrowing order in society, blurring boundaries, breaking down all distinctions. Don't we see a lot of that today? Don't we see it everywhere today? And it's accelerating. Well, here's why. Here's why. But it's beyond humans to coordinate. It's beyond flesh and blood. It's spiritual conspiracy. Conspiracy of spirits. And there's actually a passage in the Bible that is a clear description of the trickster. Let me show you. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 18. As a madman, the who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor, and saith, Am not I in sport? What does that sound like? It's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank. You know that's happened to multiple people where these guys, they do the prank videos, and a lot of it's fake. Okay, I know a lot of it's fake. It's totally fake. So much of it is fake. But there have been instances where people do something to someone, they mess with them, and the person gets really mad, and they attack them, and they punch them, and it is real, and they keep saying it's just a prank, and it's not stopping them. And people are like, one of these days someone's going to get killed. Because is it not just all instantly better because you say it's just a prank? But you say, am not in sport. It's just a joke. Saying, he deceives his neighbor. It says, it's just a joke. That's the trickster. He's a liar. He deceives his neighbor. Remember they said that about the trickster deities is a god of deception. Absolutely. That's what the trickster does. But it's the same thing as, what does it say? As a madman that casts firebrands, arrows, and death. Well, guess what? That's what the trickster does too. They do pranks, and they also deal in death. They deceive and play tricks, and they also kill, assassinate, engage in psychological warfare, overthrow the established order, and laugh as they spread chaos. And they don't care who gets hurt in the process. They don't care one bit. In fact, they laugh. Laugh at your pain. They laugh at the destruction. Absolutely laugh at the destruction. They mock you. Then when you're complaining and you're whining and you're crying about the destruction of the beauty and the order, they laugh at you. They mock you. They see you as weak. To fight against all this, please arm yourself with the knowledge contained in the teachings in the End Times Chaos playlist. I leave a link here, but there's a playlist on my channel called End Times Chaos. Okay, I'm not gonna end with some big long thing, because in order for you to arm yourself against all this with the knowledge that you need, it's gonna be more than just the end of this video, me giving a little, talk, or one message, really. But, definitely make sure to counteract all this, you have to watch the Author of Confusion teaching. But besides that, you should absolutely, please, go through this playlist I created, End Times Chaos, and start going through and watch all those videos. And so that you will be able to understand what you're dealing with in regards to the tricksters and their agendas. And again, this is only the first installment in a bunch of other things that I'm working on. This is only the first part. I kind of led up to it with the other ones and the Kanye stuff. This is the first part as far as this brand new, uncharted territory of things, but things that are really important that we need to talk about. And so make sure you get caught up so that as we come out with more in the next installment, you're going to be caught up and you're going to be armed with the knowledge from the Bible, okay? And in the End Times Chaos playlist, it's a huge portion of it is, Bible studies that are just getting truth from the Word of God in your heart and in your mind so that you are solid, prepared, and that you don't get taken advantage of by the devil through his devices. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I don't want to make it any longer. We've already gone through a bunch of information. That's what I point you to. I always point you back to Jesus Christ, the Word of God. Go watch that playlist. And I hope that you understand that I showed you this is going on through all history, but also that's what's going on right now. So if you want to understand where we're going, you need to understand this. And that will give you a hint. Okay? So that's pretty much it. I'm just going to end it there. Thank you for watching, listening. Thank you for all the support and all the prayers. Please like, share, subscribe, and make sure you click the links below the description and check out the links below, especially the Telegram feed. Please subscribe to the Telegram feed where you get everything in there no matter what. You don't have to worry about hitting a notification bell or any junk like that. You get all the updates, and that's pretty much it. Thank you. God bless you. Have a good day.